Okay, well, it has happened. The Game Awards has been and it has gone. And of course, Warhammer 40k Total War was announced. Now, of course, everybody knew this was going to happen. I don't know. I kind of always wanted this game, but in some ways I felt a little bit disappointed that the leaks were so right. I've always wanted a 40k Total War, but when it was the game that we all knew it was going to be, it's always that, yeah, I knew this present was coming at Christmas, but I'm excited for it anyway. Yeah, you know, last week we got the Medieval 3 tease. This week we got 40k Total War. That sounds like the best of both worlds, right? We've got fantasy, we've got history, but this is not actually about 40k being in Total War. It's actually about what kind of a game this is going to be and what this tells us about the future of Creative Assembly. Every couple of years, I think it does sort of leaves us a bit of a hole at where Total War is going and where this franchise is going to take us in the next few years. And I think the two announcements we've had have been very, very telling about Creative Assembly's, well, direction in the past, how they feel about it now, and where they're trying to frame their audience for the next decade. And I have a lot of thoughts. Not all of them, well, actually, few of them incredibly, some of them are positive. I don't know. Let's ground the video in facts at this point, what we know about Total War Warhammer 40k. Of course, it was revealed last night at the Game Awards. It's developed by Creative Assembly, that's a given, and of course, it's the continuation of their relationship with Games Workshop, who they've made 3 games with and too many DLCs. Now, 40k was always going to be the next step, really, to push it into a new area, to keep things fresh while keeping that license and relationship with Games Workshop, and of course, take Total War into a completely new spectacle, which they are really going to do here. It was, of course, introduced on stage by David Harbour of Stranger Things and Black Widow dad fame. What's his name? Red ketchup bottle? It's positioned, though, as a full Total War title. No more. I mean, imagine if it was Warhammer 40k Sagas. That would be, well, I kind of want them to do that for the rage bait, but no, this is a full game. Of course it is. And it's not just coming to PC, but it will be released on Xbox and PlayStation as well. It will be the first full Total War game on consoles. That's an interesting thing that we're going to get onto very, very soon. The trailer showed us quite a lot there. When we got some gameplay, planetary battlefields, massive scale armies, orbital visuals, a grim dark tone. There's nothing cartoony here. They are going as far into the grim dark as they can. In fact, from rumors, I've heard that this will be the first, I think, 15 or 18 game. I don't know how the American ratings work, but there won't be a separate Blood Pack DLC. This will be the base game. This will be as adult as the Total War games have ever been, which at least is a positive there. But the trailer suggests quite a lot. Caligar will be one of the main characters that we'll get to play as the Space Marines. We'll be using the factions of, well, the Astra Militarum. We'll be able to use the Space Marines themselves, the Eldar, and of course the Orcs. There's a lot of different layered surface to surface warfare. It seems to hint that you can go from orbital to ground warfare in one fell swoop. Now, I don't know if this is actually the case or there's just a slick way of showing how this is going to work, but at least we'll be fighting on the ground. There's potentially some naval battles in ships, and of course, the strategic layer that looks a lot like Gothic Armada, or really the first thing I thought was, this looks like Star Wars Battlefront Galactic Conquest. But hey, I've kind of wanted that to come back for some time anyway. The factions have been designed around asymmetry. Less focus on neat formations, more on spectacle, and, well, it's 40k, so it's going to be scale as well. Already, a lot of this looks cool, but it kind of puts some red flags out for me, and it makes it makes me very cautious, and I think it probably should for you as well. The main things that people have been saying about 40k Total War and seeing this gameplay and seeing this trailer is, wow, this looks awesome, but it doesn't look like a Total War game. In fact, it looks so close to Dawn of War. We've actually recently just got Dawn of War 4 being announced as well, and this does look like a Dawn of War game. It looks like the sort of Supreme Commander type of RTS rather than the Total War that we've come to know and love. They are really breaking away from the format, and that is really the core tension of where this franchise is going. Total War has always, and I mean always, been built on the spectacle of formations, lines, strategy, flanks, morale systems, of course, everything regarding to terrain and battlefields that you can plan and read as you go along. Mixing that with the top-down grand strategy of the overworld maps as well. That is where the core of Total War has always been. And 40k is built on range dominance, shooting from afar. Of course, the Orcs can get up close, but apart from that, not really. The cover systems, verticality, extreme asymmetry, as in we've got troops like, I don't know, Space Marines that are not even close to being balanced with anything else in, I don't know, the Astra Militarum and that sort of thing. Individual unit abilities are sort of way above anything that we've ever seen before. Of course, Total War has just put in things like hero units in their more fantastical games and put them in their recent historical ones, so that kind of fits in there. But vehicles, titans, flying ships, we can see some moonbeam ice creams. It's absolutely so far away from the DNA of Total War. And that leaves a question that I'm going to pose to you right now, but we're going to come back to a little bit later on. Can Total War's DNA actually survive in this 40k universe? I mean, how do formations matter when bolters and artillery and orbital fire exist? And we can sort of see this. The gameplay is a mass. It is a mass and a mess all at once, with shots going everywhere. This is not like the Polar Wars or Empire Total War, where you had, of course, guns and projectiles, but everybody was still fighting in formations. That's why it worked really well. This is such a leap for this franchise, and it excites me and terrifies me at the same time. It's not necessarily me being pessimistic, but it's kind of the design reality. I mean, what does maneuvering and tactics mean when units can teleport or fly or deep strike on the battlefield? I mean, honestly, I think this is such an important question that needs to be asked for this game. And that brings us on to Creative Assembly's track record and why they're going from, well, being at the lowest they've ever been to trying the biggest leap that they've ever done. Warhammer 3 was fairly successful and, of course, a great seller, but the DLCs had an uncomfortable launches and reactions from their fan base. A long period of silence from proper historical Total Wars. Pharaoh, Thrones of Britannia, Troy, all not really hitting where they need to be. The cancellation of Hyenas, their FPS game as well, where they lost a lot of money, causing a lot of layoffs and restructuring. The community and Creative Assembly as a company are probably the worst they've ever been. Not in terms of, I guess, money and scale, but in terms of, well, solidified trust. And Total War has started to drift its identity quite a lot recently, with the mix of fantasy and historical coming together in titles like Troy, and that has caused a huge amount of tension. And it kind of looks like, yeah, they are reacting to that not just in a very subtle way. So when Creative Assembly say they're tackling 40k, the most complex setting they've ever touched, the context of when they're doing this and why they're doing this really, really does matter. I think it is probably the biggest jump that they could have made, and almost maybe a Hail Mary at something that is confirmed to sell because people are so excited for this era. And of course, 40k, we saw Space Marine 2, how well that sold, and they hadn't made a game in that franchise for over a decade. So when that actually comes to Total War, it is going to sell maybe more copies than they've ever sold ever before, including the first Warhammer Total War and Three Kingdoms. But whether it actually works, that's an entirely different question. And that takes me on to what actually the intention of Creative Assembly, in my opinion, is for the future. Because they didn't just announce 40k Total War. They said that's going to be the next game, so we'll probably get that at the end of 2026, maybe early 2027. But they also announced that Medieval 3 would be coming a lot longer down the line. They said it's in pre-production, which means it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years later. Now, they did this because they knew if they just announced 40k Total War, people would be very angry that there was no sort of historical point within Total War anymore, that they just basically left historical to the wayside. So they put that in first, before they announced 40k, to say, look, we're doing historical, but this fantasy setting is going to be our next project, which I understand why, but I think there's another reason they're doing it. Total War is about to go through the biggest restructure it's ever been through. 40k is going to change the entire identity of this game, and they are going to put a huge rift between fantasy and historical, perhaps for good reason. See, there has been a lot of melding and blurring the lines between what is fantasy Total War and what is historical Total War, and that means that every fan doesn't have their own identity now. Maybe you were a fan of Rome Total War or Medieval Total War. Maybe you're a fan of Warhammer Total War. You like the fantasy or you like the history, but you don't like Troy, where it's kind of both. I think 40k and Medieval 3 are going to be so different and almost feel like an entirely new franchises, an entirely new games. And I think that's the way that they're going from this point onwards. They are going to split fantasy so far away from what historical Total War is, they're not going to look similar whatsoever. I think Medieval 3 is going to stick with formations, basically kind of a remake in some ways, but expanding upon Medieval 2 Total War on a much bigger scale. And then 40k is going to take the additions of like flying beasts and things they did with their fantasy Warhammer, but push it even more with orbital strikes and almost having this Dawn of War style of battle with multiple variants and verticality. And I think these two are going to be so different that they're probably going to be unrecognizable other than name to being in the same franchise. I mean, look, could 40k work? Yes. I mean, it is going to evolve the franchise a lot. It is going to sell very well no matter what. That doesn't mean it's going to be received very well, but hey, this is a good idea if they just want plain, well, recognizability with the names. If it adds in true multi-layered warfare, that's going to be absolutely incredible. But what if it doesn't? I mean, the worst case scenario is if they just focus on spectacle over systems and battles devolve into blobs and abilities. I mean, we know they unintentionally had battles evolve into blobs and abilities in things like Rome 2 when it first came out, and that didn't go too well. Now, if they intentionally go in with that thesis, I think people are going to be a little bit unhappy unless they give it a specific identity. This needs to work for Total War. I think this next 5 years is going to be the be-all and end-all for this franchise. They are going to split their fan bases so far down the middle, but maybe for good reason. Maybe Total War is going to become two things. It's going to become historical and fantasy, and there's going to be no mix-over between the two. And you can pick one or you can pick both, but at least you have a defined definition of what each game is going to be. Almost two franchises. If I'm going to be honest, I really hope they get rid of the sagas thing. I don't think they're going to risk that anytime soon, so we're pretty safe there. But with Medieval 3 and 40k, the next 5 years is the sink or swim for this franchise. And honestly, I hope they swim. I want this to do so well, and I want it to be so good. But I don't think Creative Assembly can blame anyone for their skepticism. And I don't know if there's a single person watching this that is 100% confident that both Medieval 3 is going to be the game that everybody wants it, that Warhammer 40k isn't going to completely change the franchise as a whole. But I guess we'll find out. But please leave your comments down below. I want to know exactly what you think. Do you think 40k is actually going to be this starting point of almost a new franchise because of the gameplay mechanics? Or do you think they are actually going to try and make it look like a Total War? That feels more risky, if I'm going to be honest, because I don't think they can do it. Yet starting almost an entirely new gameplay system from the ground up with this new war core engine that they have, that has its own risks and opportunity for failure itself, especially with community trust and then the subsequent years of this franchise. But let me know down in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff on the Total War franchise. But until then, I will see you in the next one.